Morning. I'm so delighted today to be joined by our most popular guest on the podcast, my fabulous friend and co-author, Susan Leigh. How are you doing, Susan?
I'm great, thank you. Good to be joining you.
Oh, I'm so pleased to talk to you again because I know that our chats are so popular on the podcast and we've got a fantastic one today. Really interesting subject to talk about. So we're going to crack straight on. If you want to get in touch with Susan afterwards, we'll give you her details at the end of the show. But we are talking dating. So crikey, dating after divorce, it's an absolute minefield, isn't it?
I think a lot of people seem to measure themselves, their worth, in terms of their relationship status. So you have an awful lot of people I work with an awful lot of people who are very concerned about if they're going to date again. Are they going to meet somebody nice? Are they going to repeat patterns? Will it last? And it's not uncommon for people to judge themselves, their worth, their value, in terms of whether or not they're in a relationship or whether or not they're accessible to a relationship. And so to me, that's the very first hurdle. Because if I only feel good when I'm partnered, where is my own inner sense of value? And often you can discover this for yourself by asking yourself, who is the most important person in my life? And I think for a lot of people, and I understand it, for a lot of people it might be the children, particularly if the children are young, and I get that's a kind of separate entity. But you often find even the regular ones of us whose kids are perhaps older, or we haven't got children, or they're not any issue for us, even then they'll be looking around for other people to put in the list before them. And I think when we've been through a breakup of a relationship, you have that whole terrible sort of breaking down of everything about yourself, about your status, about your lifestyle. So much struggles, probably for a long time. People can trundle along in negative relationships for years, and gradually their confidence goes, their sense of worth goes, their posture goes, their outlook on life goes. And we need, in my opinion, to take some time when a relationship's break down to, I think, grieve and lick those wounds, because it has often been a very slow burn of erosion of everything around us. And also there's an awful lot of stuff to sort out too when we break up a relationship.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with everything that you've said there. I think it is getting back that sense of who you are, isn't it? And there's a sense of trust that's been broken down in that's that sort of central trusted relationship, isn't it? Especially if you weren't the one who made that decision, it's very difficult to get back out again. So I suppose the first thing to do would be to think about, how do we know when we're actually ready to start looking for a new relationship?
I think, for me, it would be when it doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
Because when we are, I know people who almost have to line up their next person before they finish with this one. And so it's almost like, I think it was Harold Pinter who said, when you marry your mistress, you create a job vacancy. And I think a lot of people, he always liked to have his one in tow, but I think for most people, it is often missing out that essential bit in the middle, where we do lick our wounds, grieve, have a bit of time to discover who you are, but discover what you like, discover how you function on your own, discover what you want to do with your life. Because often if we are in a relationship, we're following perhaps, and rightly so, we're following the requirements of the relationship. We're doing things together, we're building a home together, we're sharing expenditure, we're thinking about holidays together, how our future aspirations might impact on our life. So all those things that have perhaps been toning down perhaps what we want to do. And I think when you're back on your own and single again, and it might be ages since you've been in that position, it's good to take stock first and think, okay, what do I want to do in my life? Am I happy in the job I'm in? I may need to work to earn money, but actually, what would I really like to do? What are my interests? Where are my friends? Have I lost a load of my friends because I'm now single? And rebuilding some identity and some sense of who you are. And to me, that is then the time when you can start thinking about if you're going to join a dating site, if you're going to join social groups, if you're going to start joining classes where you perhaps meet people. To my mind, that's when you are in a better place, as good a place as you can be, to start thinking about dating again. And that doesn't always mean somebody's going to rock up and say, hey, honey, but it can be a time when you are then feeling ready and able to spot the cues, follow them through, and enjoy the whole process of dating.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. I think you said about, you talked a bit there about finding yourself and about rediscovering who you are. And if you've been in that position where you've kind of gone from I'm somebody's son or daughter, I'm somebody's girlfriend, I've then gone on to be the next person's girlfriend and the next person and the next, and it's been that thing. You might, it could have been, even without a long marriage, it still could have been 30, 40 years. So, and of not actually looking inside yourself and understanding who you are. So how do we even start to rediscover who, or not even rediscover, but maybe discover for the first time who we actually are and what we want from our lives? Where do we go with that?
I think some people, you're right, can be quite numb because they have just drifted with the flow of where their life has led, and to some extent that's okay. And if we have children, that is often the way we cope and the way we function. But if we find ourselves single, like, to my mind, one of the biggest is saying yes. Yeah, saying yes more often, saying yes to yourself, saying yes to opportunities, and going out and exploring. So, somebody might say to you, do you feel like coming along and joining us with temping bowling, or there's a walking group, or there's there's an opportunity to join a night school class or something where you get out and you go along and see what appeals. And sometimes saying no to saying yes to things that you're not really quite sure about can actually lead to interesting opportunities. So to my mind, it's about being receptive. It's about joining the world again. You may find you're having to get a job now because your financial situation has changed. You may find you've more time on your hands because you're not with your children as much. So there can be an awful lot of changes that impact on you that weren't necessarily anticipated, but where utilizing the time you do have to get out and about and start enjoying, participating, finding out what's happening locally, asking other people to join in if you're working, or neighbors, or whatever it might be. But really starting to reinvent yourself, and that is the way to discover what you do like. And actually that's only a replication of what you probably did as a kiddie, where
Yeah.
you started doing things and going to football classes or tennis classes or drama or whatever it might be, doing all those different things and finding what you liked and what you didn't like. But that is the best way to start doing those things. And by saying yes to invitations and opportunities, you actually get out and circulate. And actually, for a lot of people, a huge part of doing that is practicing your conversational skills. Because for many of us, we've perhaps not had a proper conversation. We've been cocooned, with the parents of the kids at school, or our co-workers, or a partner, and we have perhaps limited or very familiar conversational exchanges. But by going out and having to start from scratch, which initially might be, oh my goodness me, but having to keep up to date with popular television, keep up to date with local news, keep up to date with what's happening in the area in terms of social things, having opinions on those things, all that can be a lost art that you start reintroducing and reclaiming, and actually discover how much fun you can have doing those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the more that you explore the things that you like and enjoy doing, you may not, there's no guarantees of any of these things, but I guess there may not be a need for even a dating site because you're doing the things that you enjoy doing. You may well meet somebody who likes doing the same sorts of things as you, I guess.
Precisely. You're meeting people who have those interests or are prepared to go along with those things, and you're starting off with a common point of interest, which is quite nice. And actually it might start out as a sort of friendship, or if you're doing a walking group, you're walking along and chatting with somebody, and you might like them, or you may not like them, or you may think they're okay. And if you keep going back, and that's always been my thing, keep going back at the same time, keep going to the gym at the same time, go to that regular class, go to the supermarket even at the same time, or walk your dog on the park at the same time. And gradually that nod, hi, and sharing nondescript comments, but can gradually evolve perhaps. And it might be somebody same sex. You might end up with a friendship with somebody who you get on well with, and that in itself is a worthwhile achievement, from going to places regularly, keeping that smile available to use. They're free, you can give them away, it doesn't cost you anything. and actually enjoy doing that, and circulating and building your own confidence in yourself, because even going to the supermarket, you'll find initially could be a chore. And yet if you just make that bit of effort, and you have a shave, or you put a bit of lipstick on, or whatever it is you do, and you go out and you're reasonably nice, and you lift your head up and you're looking around and smiling and being receptive, all these things really are an investment in yourself, feeling good, but also in the possibility of having relationships, and certainly coming away feeling better about yourself.
Yeah, you're so right. There's something about kind of standing tall that kind of, there'll be some physiological, biological stuff that I know nothing about, but I'm sure it releases some hormones into your body, just that feeling of kind of pulling yourself up, breathing deeply, kind of smiling. I'm sure, I can't even remember what hormone it is, but I'm sure the whole thing about smiling actually releases hormones into your brain. And
it's a whole endorphin lift and the dopamine lift. And absolutely, because if you're feeling downcast and depressed, the whole structure, the whole physiology, you're not really looking up, you've got your head down, you're introverted, you're feeling detached from the world at large, don't come near me. And it's something simple that I will say to clients, look up and see. And also the whole thing about feeling low and flat is it's a very self-absorbed approach, because you're not really paying attention to other things. It is very much a me experience. So being receptive and looking out and being available is less about the me and more about the world, and engaging and being available, and all those things which we can forget about if we have been battered over a very slow decomposition of our relationship, and a breakdown, and perhaps lots of abuse and insults and negativities come our way, and the hassle and the stress of it all, and the constant battles perhaps that we've been going through. All that can be very wearing, and so starting to emerge out of that and liberate yourself a bit is a really positive step to take.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I'd never thought, oddly, I'd never thought about this before, but when you look at somebody's body who is feeling downtrodden, and you called it inward looking, and actually when I looked at your body position when you were reflecting what an inward looking person is, their head is looking in towards their body kind of curls in on itself.
It's almost kind fetal. It's almost
I was going to say, almost fetal. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny how that kind of reflects outwardly, because nobody's going to come and talk to somebody who's looking in because they look like they're not open to and receptive to even conversation, to even a hi, how are you, kind of, when you're walking past somebody in the morning. And I think you're absolutely right that this has got to be the starting point. The starting point is not getting on Bumble or Tinder or these terrifying dating sites. The start of getting yourself out there is literally just get yourself out of the house and doing some things that perhaps you've never done before, that you think maybe you could enjoy. And even if you hate them, don't do them again. But don't say no
think
before you've tried it.
I think as well, the thing with this is as well about friendships too, because that can be something that impacts on us, because our friends may have divided loyalties. So we may find we lose some of the people that we think are important to us. There may be divided loyalties, as I say. We may even be given advice. I mean, our friends may well mean well for us and give us fabulous advice and all the rest of it. But we have to be quite cautious, I think, with advice. We have to work out whether those people have our interests at heart, because often our friends may have, and they may be completely unaware of it, they may have their own vested interest in keeping us close or keeping us following the ideas that they think are right for us. And that we can include family in that too. But where, you know, we perhaps listen to that advice, allow those people to be supportive of us, but at the same time, take that step back sometimes, and we don't have to be abrasive or aggressive. We can just say, that I hear what you're saying, that's fabulous, thank you, I'll have a think about it. And that can buy us a little bit of time to go away and see how we feel, because sometimes we may want to run ahead and do things, and other times we may just want to sit and in the garden for a while and just stare out with our tongue hanging out of our mouth and a cup of cocoa and just be left, you know. And that's the ups and downs of healing after a difficult breakup. So sometimes we have to just appreciate that that's how it is for us right now. So, you know, I'm a big fan of letting people help you and be supportive and there for you, but I'm also a big fan of saying, hang on a minute, I'm not just going to follow the track down the path or the track that you're suggesting. It's got to be for me, it's got to be right for me.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is, it's taking on board what people say and letting them and sitting with them, because their experiences, and we were talking about this in a totally different context just before we pressed record, but everybody's experiences are completely different. Nobody's lived the same life that we have, and we've all experienced it in a different way. We all, you know, you and me could be stood in exactly the same room and experiencing something in a completely different way, listening to a conversation, and it'll land differently with me than it'll land with you. And I think we've got to bear that in mind when we're receiving advice, that we're receiving it, but we don't need to necessarily take it, do we? You know, it's listening and then seeing how it sits with us and seeing how it feels.
Not allowing ourselves to get too stressed either. I think that's a difficult one sometimes, because sometimes if people are spending time with us, we might almost feel obliged to do what they're suggesting. And because that's what they're saying, you know, we know they care about us, they've taken time with us, but actually at the end of the day, there is often that need to hold it back and just say, yes, I really appreciate what you're saying, what you're doing, but let me think about it. And maybe sometimes owning up and saying, actually, I'm feeling a bit pressurized. Sometimes just confessing that. And other people might go, oh, yeah, sorry. You know, I hear you. I'll step back a little bit. And if you're honest and you're upfront about it, most people will not take offense at you confessing that or saying that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people would appreciate honesty, nice honesty. but yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And working on friendships can give you an insight into yourself before you've necessarily feel ready to kind of necessarily put yourself out there. I mean, I do know people who've kind of gone, right, I'm a month down the line now, we're definitely split up, I'll get myself out there and start going on the online dating sites, and very quickly realize that it's actually, hang on a minute, this feels too soon. I'm not prepared and I'm not ready for this at this stage. And I think you're spot on when you said
that's why a lot of those relationships are called rebounds. You know, one time that was a fairly common phrase, that the first serious-ish relationship after a breakup was a rebound, which is a doing in and out, you know, and a rebound is where you're taking all that love and affection and emotion and goodwill and desire to be loved and lovable and cozied up and all the rest of it. You're taking all that seeing the first available person and dumping it all on them, and then going, oh, they weren't what I thought. They weren't what I expected. You know, I thought they were like this. I thought they were like that. And actually what that is called in therapy speak is a transference, because what we're taking is that whole template of what we wanted and what we were available to offer and how good we are and how loving we are and what a nice person we are, taking all that and exactly how it looks for us, and we're passing it on to that person and then investing in that relationship. And then as the real other person emerges and we go, crikey, they're not like that at all. They're not like we thought. I thought they were going to be like this. I thought it was going to be like that. And that's what a rebound does for you often.
Yeah, I guess it's if you're kind of moving into that, you've got to have this awareness to begin with, that that's where you are, you know, that this is not necessarily a happy ever after, because mentally you're not necessarily there. Whether you're in the position to deal with that at that point, I'm not sure. But I suppose the other thing to think about is when I'm going to say when when I was sort of in my 20s, probably dating before I got married, the people that I met them in pubs, in clubs, you know, I met them socially through friends. That was kind of how you, I guess, through work, that was sort of how you met people, wasn't it? Back when you were 20 something, you know. Lots of us now, you know, it seems more than ever, it might be because of my social circle, but it seems more of us running small businesses, working in smaller teams, maybe working from home a lot more, certainly since COVID. And the world has changed in terms of how we go about meeting people. You don't go through the newspaper columns looking at people's profiles anymore. You know, sure if anybody young is listening to this, they'll think I'm absolutely ancient even suggesting it. But so what, you know, I'm 40, let's say 40 something. Where on earth do I start?
I think initially it's a good idea to, as I said before, perhaps look at yourself, look at what you're wanting, invest a bit of time and effort. A lot of people use a breakup as an opportunity to do an overhaul on themselves. So it might be time to refresh your wardrobe as best you can. It might be time to, I say to people sometimes, go to a completely different hairdresser than you used to, because that person will see you differently than your usual regular hairdresser sees you, whether it's a barber or a hairdresser. Do that, because you might come away with a different look that you hadn't thought about before. Going to things like, you know, regular walks, accepting invitations, feeling better about yourself. I think, you know, joining in with things that you might not have done before, and also not being desperate. It's not a very good look to be desperate. So I think starting it is about perhaps practicing your social skills, becoming a bit more confident, maybe joining one of the free online sites and just having a few almost pen pal type exchanges where you're messaging for a while, that you're getting to know each other, you're getting your confidence about having an interaction with somebody else. And I think these are ways that we gradually start building our confidence up, and we start also reacquainting ourselves with what the dating world is like out there. Because for some people, you know, they discover quite rapidly that a lot of people on dating sites are literally just wanting a hookup, which means a one-night stand, and sex is usually involved, and you can come away feeling a bit used and abused, either as a male or a female in those situations. So, you know, getting a bit used to what it's like out there, what is expected, what's on offer, what you can kind of anticipate may be happening, and just don't expect quick results straight away. Because I think initially, depending on what your situation is, it can take a little while just to feel ready, and that you're not second guessing somebody, or that you're not hoping for great things that perhaps are going to be a while before they come. So just taking your time with it, and treating this as a bit of a new phase in your life, an almost apprenticeship. Like if you're having to start working again, or if you're having to start building a new home again. All these things are there's a lot going on in your life when you're fairly soon out of a breakup or a divorce. So, you know, it's about being gentle, appreciating that you're perhaps a little bit vulnerable, you're a little bit highly strung or stressed, and just saying, okay, I don't need to do all this today. Don't need
Yeah.
to do everything right now. It doesn't, if I've not got a date by Christmas, it doesn't matter. I'll just enjoy the view, I'll enjoy the journey, enjoy what brings my way, and accept that sometimes you might make friends who are friends, and that might be perfectly good enough for the time being. That might be perfectly lovely, where you just go out and enjoy, and go out for a few drinks or a few meals or a few walks or whatever it is, and find what you enjoy and just do it a step at a time.
No, I like that, and less stress of having to worry about being naked as well.
Yes.
I suppose, you know, as we get older, there are, I read on Instagram, I think it was the other day, one of the fabulous divorce coach that I follow, called Claire Black, and she'd put, I think it was Claire, if I've misquoted her, I apologize, but there was a list of kind of must-haves, you know, and I think as we get older, we kind of have this, whether it's a mental list or whether it's actually written down, this kind of things that are really important to us about the person that we're looking for. And I don't mean physical. I have to say, you know, I'm not saying they've got to have black hair and blue eyes and be 9'3" and whatever. Not necessarily those things, but maybe the type of person they are, their political beliefs, their religious beliefs, you know, whatever, these sorts of things. Is that important for us to have kind of, I don't suppose nailed down, but to have an idea of what we're looking for? Or should we be going into this just going, whatever comes my way, let's give it all a go?
I think whatever comes our way can be fun. And often if we're too strict about what we want, do we want somebody to be very strict about us? You know,
Sure.
if we're not the perfect age or the perfect look or the perfect body or the perfect lifestyle, do we want to be rejected on those grounds? So sometimes being a little bit more fluid, a little bit more flexible, you can end up meeting somebody who's really rather nice and really rather special for you, and it can link in beautifully well that way. So because of that, and are you able to cut this? Are you able to cut this?
So I agree with you in terms of not completely judging people, but what I find really difficult with on, in terms of, we're just talking about online dating right now, is this whole swiping left and right things. Because if I think back to all of the people, this makes it sound awful actually, if I think back of the people that I have fallen for in my life, that I've had relationships with, there's not always been an immediate, you know, I don't think I fall in love at first sight. I don't think I've had that. It's more of a gradual thing as you get to know somebody, as you, like you said earlier in the podcast, you know, you keep going back at the same time, and you slowly develop, and it may begin with a friendship and there may be a spark of something more, but it starts as a friendship and you grow to like them and they become more attractive to you because of the personality that's built in. So this is where it blows my mind. This is where it blows my mind when I'm looking, you know, when we're talking about online dating, because I'm making a judgment call on whether I want to have a deeper conversation with somebody just from looking at their photograph. You know,
Which
am I
may not
gonna,
actually be their photograph.
which, well, that's a whole other
Or it could
podcast.
be a 10 or 15-year-old photograph as well. This is a problem, isn't it?
Couldn't it just? Absolutely. So what, where do we even start with this swiping left and swiping right? And I think it's left for no and right for yes, just in case anybody's never done it. But yet, where do we start if we want to be open to opportunities, but there needs to be some sort of chunking them down as to who you even want to have a conversation with? How?
I think this is a challenge, isn't it? And this is a whole different world of dating, which it for many people works fabulously. We're leading busy lives, like you were saying before. A lot of people are working different hours, they're working from home, they're perhaps not going out as much as they did. A lot of people work away from home, so they're not around, they're not available, they're here, there and everywhere. They're exhausted, they're perhaps seeing their children 2 or 3 times a week, so they want to be available for them. They perhaps don't have as much disposable income if they're running 2 homes or living on a budget. And we all know about cost of living and things like that, which is sky high at the minute too. So there's an awful lot of stuff that's getting in the way of us just being receptive and available. And online dating is a useful way of cutting through an awful lot of the challenges of going down to the local pub or whatever and finding somebody single and available, and discovering that they are available. Because the challenge with that is, are they married, are they partnered, are they free, what am I getting? So each situation has its own pros and cons. But I think the whole thing about online dating is I mean, it depends how keen you are. I knew somebody who treated finding a new partner as almost like a project. And so she had, at some point in time, I think she set aside a month, and sometimes she was doing a couple of dates a day just to trawl through the various people and meet them and have a chat, and eventually worked out, and she's happily ensconced living with somebody in the countryside, all loved up, and that's fabulous. But there are a lot of people, you kiss a lot of frogs before you find a prince, and I think it is being cautious. And I think as once we get over 30, we've got to accept that we've been around the block a time or two, as have other people, and what we're getting may well be equally baggaged like we are. And so we have to accept that. Be steady, take it easy, don't invest too much of yourself initially, relax, have a bit of fun, but be wary, be cautious, because somebody might be a con man or woman, somebody might be just in it for a bit of fun because they're still married or whatever it is. But to some extent those things can happen offline too, and it is about being careful about what you do and where you go and who you meet and all the stuff that goes with that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we sometimes forget that with online dating, you do still get the same issues offline. It's just
Sure,
different, I think.
it's different,
And the
yeah.
whole thing you said about, you need to kiss a lot of frogs. I absolutely, one of my very good friends, I think she had 22 dates in 1 week. She
Yeah,
certainly on more than one day she had breakfast, lunch, and dinner
yeah,
with different people. And it is, I think, to an extent, the people I know who've had successful online dating or now in successful online dating relationships, they have considered it to be another part-time job, and it's
yeah.
taken that sort of additional level of hours to actually sort of commit to it, I suppose. So it is, are you in a place where you want to go through that, where you've got the time that you want to spend doing online dating to that extent? Or
And it's not a
actually,
very romantic way to proceed, is it? I mean,
not, is it?
you're not bumping into somebody and there's not going to be the chemistry across the bar, and that little frisson where you go up and you think, oh, are they going to talk to me, and do they want my number and all that kind of thing? But it is a very different approach.
Yeah.
So, and I share something that I remember going to it was a professional ladies dating site launch thing, or dating club launch, and all the women in the room, it was a female only thing, so excuse me guys, but all the women in the room were professional women,
Yeah.
busy women. It was primarily, there were a lot of execs from the BBC there. I did quite a lot of radio work with them, and I've been invited along to this launch, and the woman running the group said, okay, supposing you meet, presuming everybody's heterosexual, presuming you meet a guy and he said, and you get on well, and you're looking at each other and you're thinking, this might be interesting, and he says to you, oh, why don't we meet up for a drink, or why don't we meet up for a get together sometime soon? And she asked the question, how many women here would immediately reach in their bags and get their diary, the phone out to log in and see when they were available? How many? And we all went, yeah, because we knew as busy women it would never happen if we didn't get our diary out and get something booked in, because we've got a lot going on in our lives. And she went, no, do not do that. What you should be saying is, yes, that would be lovely, thank you, full stop, and leave it there. And the idea is that if you want a successful relationship to be built on a good basis, a good foundation, do not make yourself too available. Stand back a little bit, say, yeah, that would be lovely, thank you, and then leave it to him to follow that up and say, okay, are you free? When would be good? You know, do you fancy next Tuesday? Would you like this or whatever? But allow there to be some space for the other person to also be interested. And it was a summary lesson for me, because I was thinking too, oh gosh, if I don't get it booked in now, it won't happen, because a lot of us are busy. You know, we run our own businesses, we're professional people, we might be working away from home, we might have only limited available time. And there is that temptation to be extremely available or enthusiastic and want to get things booked in. And I learned from that. And that's something I pass on a lot, because it is about being also in a position where you allow the other person to make some steps towards you too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really like that. Before we finish, I suppose the one thing is that we really ought to touch on is safety considerations. So let's say I'm going on a date on Wednesday night. I'm going to meet somebody that I've met online dating, or even, do you know what, even in a bar, but it's not somebody that I know very well. How do I protect myself? What sorts of things should I be thinking about doing?
I think that's a good question, and I think a few things. I think one is go in your own car or under your own steam, because that way, if you feel uneasy or unsure, you can leave if you want to, and you are independent. And it also means you're not going to drink as much. You know, it means you're going to be careful how much you actually drink in terms of alcohol. I think the second thing is to have your mobile phone with you, so you have that handy. The third thing is actually ask a friend to phone after about 40-50 minutes. And that way, that if you're feeling uncomfortable, or you want to make some headway and get out of a situation that you're feeling isn't quite going your way, you can then pretend that you've got an emergency at home and you need to go.
Yeah.
So first of all, your friend is checking up on you anyway to make sure you're okay. But secondly, you've got a justifiable way of going, oh, really? Oh, my goodness me, I better leave right now. You've got the opportunity to do that. I think the fourth thing is to set a limit on the time. Even if you're getting on like a house on fire and you think the other person feels the same way too, there's no guarantee that that's the case. So if it's a first date, it's useful to say, right, I'll meet you for an hour and then leave. And then if you both do like each other and one of you is not being polite or courteous or whatever, then you can follow up and book another date after that. So I think, and I suppose also to some extent, there's also maybe not leaving your drink unattended. There's that thing as well about, because there's the spiking thing going on, and there's also the Rohypnol thing where perhaps people are putting additives to your drink, or but some people are getting injected in their bodies as well. But just being careful about how close you get, and maybe keeping your drink nearby. So those sorts of things. And some people like to be even a little bit more security conscious, and maybe be mindful that they only give their mobile number out and no address, so that people don't know too much where they live, or have too much notion of where they can go and run into them again. So there's that sort of sense of just protecting yourself and practical things like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's excellent advice. Susan, it's been wonderful. I could talk to you all day long if I possibly could, and if our listeners could stomach it. But I think we'd probably best call it a day for today. I'm sure that there'll be lots of people wanting to get in touch with you, and I know this among other things is an area of work that you're involved in. Would you just give us a brief overview of the types of work that you can help people with, and how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in speaking to you further?
Thank you. Well, I'm a counsellor and a hypnotherapist. My website is lifestyletherapy.net, and I work a lot with stress, anxiety, confidence, self-esteem, and all the ancillary things that go with that, like sleeping and relationship issues and repeating negative patterns of behavior and how we feel about ourselves. Loads of information on my website, loads of articles that I've written that are free to access. And I have written 4 books. The fourth one is in conjunction with somebody not too far away from me here. But I've written books on stress and endings. My book on death is also including endings and recovering from the trauma of a loss or an ending of your way of life or your health or whatever. So yeah, that kind of thing. I'm happy for people to get in touch. I'm happy for people to use the website. That's what it's there for, and that's wonderful. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you. And on a personal note, I can highly recommend working with Susan because I have personally, and she was absolutely wonderful. So if you are thinking of contacting somebody for help, she is definitely at the top of my little black book. So thank you for joining us, Susan. Thank you for your inspirational words and your great advice as always. And thank you for joining us, and we will speak to you again very soon.